O ye fellow solo self-found players, bow down to the RNG gods and pray. All jokes aside, solo self-found in PoE2 very much is a roll of the dice, unfortunately, at the moment, with the current state the crafting system is at. However, as with any roll of the dice, your odds increase the more rolls you get. So, I'll be providing you with a few quick tips as to how to increase those chances. And so let's dive right into it. First and foremost, for those that are still in the campaign, it is worth very quickly highlighting that it is very beneficial to periodically check into the vendors at your town hub in whichever act you're in. There will typically be 3 vendors that are worth keeping an eye out for. One will sell magic items as well as rings and amulets, there's charms as well. Another which will sell martial weapons and armor. And finally, a gambling vendor, which has access to all of them. It's worth noting that the items within these vendors roll in the exact same way as anything dropped out in the world. So you can get rares, magic items with all the tiers of prefixes and suffixes being exactly the same. So keep an eye out. Weapons especially, they can be a very good source of finding upgrades. Secondly, and probably most importantly, especially when it pertains to once you get to mapping an endgame, is it is very important to learn the base items that are specific to your build and the highest tiers in each of those classes. So a handy resource for this is a build planner, such as Maxroll here, for example. If you load up their PoE2 planner and look at this section here, say if you're looking for a chess piece and you are an energy shield related build, you can select energy shield here, mouse over all these items here. Unfortunately, there is no ability to sort. But what you'll quickly learn by mousing over these is to find out the highest tiers in each class. So, for example, here with Energy Shield, the 3 top tier items in this class are Expert Altar Robe, Expert Hex's Robe, Expert Kef Raiment. And the reason I point these out is that each drop that you get from a mob, irrespective of rarity, is effectively the equal chance of the potential for an upgrade. So as much as a rarity may show you more attributes and give you a better idea of whether an item will be an upgrade, a white version of the same item equally has the same potential of being an upgrade as a rare. So what you want to be doing when you're out farming maps is very much keeping an eye out for not just the rare versions of the top tier items from each armor slot, weapon slot, but also the white and blue versions, because they have an equal chance of being an upgrade as much as a rare is. We don't spend our currency in a trade system. We very much will be using it heavily to upgrade items. So the more chances that you have and more sources of items that you have, the higher chance of getting an upgrade. So for example, here you can see from a recent farming session, I've saved a few items that I've kept an eye out for. I am a int-based energy shield build, so I've been collecting up some foci and some armor pieces. And basically, for each one of these, you want to be using your orbs of transmutation and augmentation, which you should have a plentiful amount of, and basically just getting your 2 attributes of each. And so forth. I use these quite generously because, as I said, I always have a plentiful amount, as should you. If you're falling short, keep in mind that you can also disenchant blue items to get more of these. But basically what you have then is a new source of items to potentially provide upgrades. You'll only get visibility into 2 of the attributes, but that will honestly be more than enough generally to give you an idea of whether it's worth continuing to craft the given item. Some key things you may look out for instance, for myself, being an energy shield, mana stacking build, I'll look for increases to energy shield on armor pieces, high rolls of mana, and another stat that you're typically looking out for in most builds is your resistances. So if you see 2 high rolls on an attribute, it may give you an idea of whether an item is worth continuing to upgrade, because these higher rarity currencies are a little bit more sparse, so you may want to be a little bit more selective in how far you continue with the crafting. For instance here, I may have a look at this piece. Stun threshold isn't that great, but the plus 77, the maximum energy shield, is relatively high. I may decide to use a regal on this and continue. Resistance roll, not too bad. Use some Exile. Plus 5 to intelligence, quite a low roll. I may start to actually question whether I would want to stop here or not. Too long didn't read version. If you're just looking for rares, you're cutting yourself short. Every single white and blue version of the highest tier armor slots that you're looking for have the equal chance of being a potential upgrade. So collect them, upgrade them. Have a look at whether the first 2 upgrades and attributes are high enough to basically warrant continuing upgrading it, and continue in that fashion. The other way you can source a few more sources of items to upgrade is you don't need to necessarily sell or disenchant these straight away if they're not worth anything to you. If you got 3 versions of the same item, so for example here I got 3 expert Keth raiments, I can come to the reforging bench, put all 3 in, reforge, and basically get another roll of the dice as to a potential upgrade. Third point here, very similar to the previous point, but a little bit more all-encompassing, apologies, is I highly recommend picking up all rings and amulets. That includes white and blue versions. They're a little bit rarer and have a larger range of stats that they can roll, so the more chances that you can have of crafting these items, the more chances of finding an upgrade. Fourth point, as I mentioned already, don't necessarily sell or disenchant failed crafting attempts immediately. If you collect 3 versions of the same item, you can use the reforging bench to basically get 1 free attempt at getting a new item. Fifth point is, I think, a lot more prudent to solo self-found than it is to the trade league, in that uniques can be quite a bit trickier to come across, especially build defining uniques. One thing that can help you find specific uniques is, rather than just relying on world drops, is to find out the base type of a given unique and use orbs of chances. To do this, basically a resource like PoE2 DB can be a good way to find out what the base item is of a given unique. So for instance, if we come in here, go to uniques, and for example, have a look at this smithing hammer, you can see what the name of the base item is here. So what you then want to look out for, if this was a unique that you were very much reliant on for a build that you wanted to make, you would specifically look out for white, and I want to be clear here, white versions or normal versions of a smithing hammer, and then using your orb of chances on that white version. So as you can see here, as it states, unpredictably either upgrades a normal item to unique rarity or destroys it. In my experience, the chances are roughly 1 in 5 or so, although again, completely RNG based, but it can be a very, very good way of target farming a given unique. One little caveat with that to watch out for is that some uniques are boss drop specific. One way to see this is, for instance, if we go here and look at Temporalis, the site here will have a limit row, which will specifically say which boss it drops from. These items, you cannot use an Orb of Chance to craft, so just be mindful of that. And that really pretty much covers it. Short and sweet. 2 little side points I'll call out quickly here in terms of solo self-found and 2 habits you may want to get into is that unless you're very much married to the build that you're playing, keep in mind we are in early access and there already have been a lot of nerfs and changes, and there may be future ones, or maybe you just want to try a new build in the future. Some key items to basically hoard or keep within your stash tabs are items with 2 or more high resistance rolls. Solving your resistances and keeping your defenses high is quite important, especially in endgame. So if you do ever find an upgrade and your resistances change, you may need to tweak some other pieces. So keeping a bit of a backlog of high resistance roll pieces can be very handy. And likewise, in general, any items with very high tier rolls. So again, you can use a site like PoE2DB, go into modifiers, and you can see the different tiers. So for example, if we go into intelligence boots and have a look at the potential movement speed rolls that can roll, say if you have a pair of boots with 35% movement speed, which is the highest tier, may be worth holding on to them for the future. Other items that I tend to hold on to is things with very high life and mana rolls, and anything with maybe potentially more rare rolls, spirit, and so forth. Anyway, hopefully there was a little bit of handy info there for all of you. If there was, please leave a like and a subscribe, and happy hunting.